to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The minutes were in the package. Does anybody have any corrections? There being none, we'll rule them as approved. We have a whole handful of appointments made by the county exec. So I'll take a motion and a second, and we'll do a voice vote on them. Moved by Supervisor Thoma, second by Supervisor Schultheis. Any questions or comments? There being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Our next item is the introduction of our new clerk of courts, Sherry Kuykendall.
Hello, I'm Sherry Kuykendall. I am currently the Register in Probate. I was appointed into that position by Judge Muehlbauer in October of 22. I look forward to working with each and every one of you. I am tasked as the clerk of court on Monday, well, technically Saturday, to perform the functions of the clerk of court, which include administrating the courts, jury management, fiscal responsibilities such as debt collection, fines, restitution. I am also charged with the keeper of the records. I'd like to just take a moment to attest to not only the board, the executive, but to also my predecessors. Perhaps you don't know, but the staff and the clerk of courts, some of them have been there for quite some time. And collectively, there are great many spans of experience that I am very blessed to be able to walk into that office, not only prepared by my mentor and predecessors, both of them, Teresa and Sarah, but to be blessed to have the experience that will come with that, which at times I suspect I will lean heavily on. We have some great judges sitting on the bench who are always open to conversation. I, too, to each and every one of you, feel very honored and blessed to be appointed to this position and to be given this opportunity. I would like to, at some point in time, even though we all are very busy, to maybe sit down and speak to each and every one of you, even if it's only for 5 minutes. I like to have conversation. I'm a big conversation person, even if that conversation is uncomfortable. I just think that it's part of the process that separates us from many other communities. I love Washington County. I swear that I was born to be public service. I've done public service for over 30 years of my life, and I like it just as much as the day that I took my first oath as a sheriff deputy in a northern Michigan county of Benzie. I loved it from the day I started to the day that I left, and I look forward to taking the oath on Monday for Washington County, and expect to love it from the day that I take it until the day that I will retire. So I'm usually a right out of the gate kind of gal. So with that, I'll say go Pax. And anything else? I'm open for questions if you have any, certainly.
No questions? Welcome to our team.
Thank you. Thank you. I do feel very blessed. Thank you.
Our first resolution is Resolution 6, the commendation of Tamala Fairman. Motion by Supervisor Newman, second by Supervisor Vespali.
Whereas Tamala Fairman has contributed 23 years of loyal service to the citizens of Washington County, and whereas Tamala Fairman has chosen to retire from her present position of Health Information Management Coordinator with the Human Services Department, now therefore be it resolved that the Washington County Board of Supervisors pause in its deliberations to pay tribute and to commend Tamala Fairman for her 23 years of meritorious service. Be it further resolved that on behalf of all citizens of Washington County, this body does herewith extend to her heartfelt thanks for her many accomplishments and successes. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to Tamala Fairman as a token of appreciation on the part of this board.
We have to vote on that voice vote. Our next resolution is Resolution 7, Commendation of John Jolson. Supervisor Shadron, Supervisor Schwab.
Whereas John Jolson has contributed 33 years of loyal service to the citizens of Washington County, and whereas John Jolson has chosen to retire from his present position of Corrections Sergeant with the Sheriff's Office, now therefore be it resolved that the Washington County Board of Supervisors pause in its deliberations to pay tribute and to commend John Jolson for his 33 years of meritorious service. Be it further resolved that on behalf of all citizens of Washington County, this body does herewith extend to him heartfelt thanks for his many accomplishments and successes. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to John Jolson as a token of appreciation on the part of this board.
Our next item is the 2024-25 Strategic Priorities Document. A motion and a second, please. Supervisor Schwab, Supervisor Thoma. I'll say up front, this is a simple motion to accept the strategic priorities advanced as a result of our retreat last year. It's not a blanket approval of all the points therein. I know there are some parts of this that several of you do not support. In fact, I am in agreement in opposition of some as well. Our voice vote today simply sets a rough framework for moving forward. Any specific points to be made in the future will require discussion and resolution by this board. Any comments or discussion? There being none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Our next item is Resolution 8, County-Aided Bridge and Culvert Replacement for the Town of Addison. Supervisor Hartwig, Supervisor Shadron. Any discussion or questions? This we vote electronically. We'll vote electronically. This is a simple majority vote. It passes unanimously. Next up is Resolution 9, General Funds Transfer for Samaritan Costs. This requires a 2/3 majority vote. Motion by Supervisor Schultheis, second by Supervisor Bailey. Any questions or discussion? Oh.
Thank you. We've had a couple questions on this, so I just wanted to clarify a couple of the items that were in the packet. So I'll start with the large number in there, the $5.3 million. What that represents is the ongoing operating deficit for the last several years. The packet alludes to this, but really this is historically through the end of 2023. So everybody kind of knows the story, right? COVID and the nursing shortage, the reduced census, and an increased reliance on contracted staff, all kind of snowballed into some operational losses in recent years, especially in 22 and 23. Excuse me. So Margie, our finance director, is here. She can help answer the technical accounting type questions if you've got any. But as these losses are incurred, essentially the general fund loans money to the Samaritan Fund to continue paying the bills. So what the $5.3 million in this resolution represents is really us recognizing this on the county's books. We've been tracking and reporting these dollars as encumbered or as spent. So this is really a largely a technical portion of the fund transfer. You remember last month we gave a fund balance report that had good news. The dollar amounts that you saw in that report already had this $5.3 million essentially subtracted out, right? So the spendable amount that you saw and the positive news that you saw already had this factored in. So again, this is largely a technical portion of the fund transfer. Moving on to some of the other components, there are $500,000 in there to continue the existing employee incentives. Those were the ones that were previously funded by ARPA. The number in here, the $500,000, that's calculated through August. So in the event that the sale or something would close sooner, there would be some, the dollar amount would end up being less than that $500,000. There are $300,000 in here to continue to address the capital needs in the facility. $500,000 was appropriated last year. That $500,000 is essentially spent, and so there were $300,000 in additional needs that were identified. And then finally, $527,000 are in the resolution for estimated costs for. Largely in there are our customary PTO and ELB payouts. When employees leave the organization, we have payouts that occur. There's also a dollar amount in there for employee appreciation incentives for when the sale would go through. Again, that's sort of like a carrot to again keep employees on our books and to continue to staff that Samaritan operation. It's also important, I think, to mention that all of these things in totality are important to maintaining the asset that we have and that we're trying to sell. The employees and the building, that's all a package deal. So I think it's important to consider all of these in totality as an important part of that. It's also probably important to note that this is not the last ask per se. As I mentioned, the operating deficit that we're considering today was through 2023. We are on pace to incur an operating deficit in 2024 as well, and we still need to address the outstanding debt on the building as well. So we sort of need to wait and see what the sale looks like, if there are proceeds from a sale or things like that, before we kind of do a closeout resolution. But there is another resolution coming, so I just wanted to point those couple of things out as well.
Supervisor Gurath?
Well, I just want to reiterate for everyone that the losses, the deficit basically has been from the end of 2021 to current. So a lot of us weren't on the board prior to that. For all of the years that it was more of a break even, we're just accustomed to hearing loss, loss, loss. And that wasn't the case really until the future of Samaritan came into question, and then the staffing issues happened, and COVID. And the census reduced, so revenues reduced, expenses went up with having to pay more to retain employees. So it's a huge amount, in my opinion, that this deficit accrued to in a very short period of time. But it is what it is. I do have a couple of questions. The first question is, since the deal isn't done and we've been accruing the deficit for several years, why would we take care of that now? Why wouldn't we wait until the deal is done and just take care of it in just one journal entry? That's the first question.
Sure. I believe, I believe we've gotten some guidance from our auditors on this issue, but I'll let Margie speak to that.
Good evening. So in our 2022 financial audit, it had already come to the attention the amount of the deficit in this Samaritan Fund being shown in the statements. And at that time, we didn't have formal board action to make a transfer in. So that's when we assigned fund balance internally to cover that. And then with the 2023 audit and the talk of the sale, it became even more of a material discussion internally and with our auditors regarding the size that had grown to and making sure that we're properly recognizing it. It won't be shown as a transfer in the 2023 financials because we're already past that time period, but we didn't want to delay it any further at this time, not knowing we have an idea of when the end might be in sight, but we wanted to at least make the effort to show that we're trying to get things kind of ready for that closeout and financially reported properly in the right funds. So.
Okay, and then the other question that I have is related to the $527,000 for employees. So far, up to this point, that money has been paid from ARPA funds. So why are we not using ARPA funds for that this time?
So the 527 is something separate. The 527,000 are things like the payout of accrued PTO benefits. That happens anytime an employee leaves employment here. So that's what the 527 is. The 500,000 to continue the existing employee incentives, that was previously under ARPA. Josh isn't here. My understanding, we decided to move that out of ARPA just because we knew we had this resolution coming forward. We're trying to keep all the costs together so that we're making one decision point on the total package rather than continuing to kind of piecemeal it together from different buckets. We're also getting to the end of where we need to have our ARPA dollars obligated. So we don't want to kind of leave it open as this unknown amount that we may use. We want to be able to say, okay, we know we're done with this on ARPA. We're moving this over to general fund. Now we know for sure what we've got for ARPA to work with so that we can get that obligated within the required timelines.
Okay. Thanks. Mm-hmm. Thank you. The other thing I just wanted to mention that I learned yesterday, the loan balance that we have for the Samaritan is in the 2.5 million range.
Yes.
That we'll have coming up that we'll need to pay off. Correct. So, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Supervisor Mary.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if, Aaron, if this is your question, but kind of going off Supervisor Garath's comments, when will we see a final bill as to what is the final number going to be? Do we have any anticipation of what that's going to be? I mean, it's going to be final payout and then balance due zero. I'm just curious as to when that might be coming and what that amount might be.
Sure. Assuming a sale occurs, obviously yet this calendar year, we would know essentially when we close out the books on the Samaritan. I think Margie could probably speak a little bit better to sort of the tail and how we bill for we bill Medicaid. There's a lag there, right? So it's not immediate upon close, there would be sort of a tail when revenues would continue to come in and offset whatever that obligation or that outstanding deficit might be. Margie, do you have any?
Yeah, we'll probably need about, I'm going to say 3 to 6 months from that sale date to kind of do the final wrap-up. Bills will still be coming in that we'll be obligated to pay. We'll have contracts that are currently on a month-to-month basis that we'll need to make sure we notify to terminate, and there might be costs related to that. So there's a lot of things that are kind of just waiting for us to get to that point. And then once we hit that point, there's just a lot of closeout work that needs to be done afterwards. So our goal in finance, we would love to have kind of everything done and settled by the end of this year so that we can close it out formally in the financial statements. So that's kind of what we're aiming for, but it really depends on the timing of the sale.
But do we have any idea what that final figure is going to be? I mean, an approximate. I realize, yeah, you're going to have some income still coming in. It's going to drag. We may not get some invoices to come due the rate that very last day. But somewhere, someone must have in their mind a ballpark. I mean, we talk hundreds of thousands of dollars. We talking a couple of million. When we're all said and done, what's that final cost going to be?
It would be in the millions. It would be my assumption. But again, it depends on what the sale proceeds net off of that amount. So we know ballpark, but again, we don't fully know what the proceeds might net off of that total.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, I just want to make certain I am following here. So, Mr. Dahl, back to your itemization, the continued existing employee incentive. Are those state bonuses, or is that extra pay? Is that overtime pay? What is that?
That's a shift. So increases to the existing shift premiums. It's an additional $3 an hour increment on the hourly pay. So it is ongoing pay that they're receiving.
Okay. I thought that was the case. And capital facilities, that makes sense. But I'm trying to better understand the employee obligation and incentive at sales. You mentioned PTO payout, and I believe Margie mentioned the same. So if it's sold in September, we have accrual through August. We pay out any unused accrued PTO at whatever last paycheck. Is that a correct understanding?
Correct.
Okay. So that part I understand, but help me understand the ELB, or extended leave bank.
Sure. When the county, this was a long time ago, but when the county got rid of their sick banks, those balances were transferred into an ELB bank for some employees. So we've got a handful of staff over there that still have a bank, and it's customary for us to pay out, I believe that's 30% of what that bank is at their regular rate of pay.
Yeah, and it depends on years of service with the county and their age, if they're eligible.
Okay, so that's based upon retirement, because I see in the handbook there's a piece about there will not be any payout of accrued ELB extended benefit leave. However, there's another provision that talks about retiree after the 65th birthday, or if 55, and et cetera, et cetera. So which one are we talking about?
So if they're not retiring, then they fall under the 55 years of age and years of service, and then it's any time that they leave employment with the county.
Okay.
So we do have a few employees over there that meet those requirements.
Right, and we want to obviously account for that. So the incentive at sale, is that, I used the term earlier, a stay bonus, is that what we're talking about?
Yes, it's an additional carrot to encourage them to remain employed with us.
Right. So that we don't have any staffing issues until we sale.
Correct.
Just curious, because I've dealt with many mergers and acquisitions over my career. Do we know, are those stay bonuses at the point of sale or some period of time after a new employment with the new buyer?
That's still somewhat undefined.
I would highly suggest that it be a month post-sale to continue that employment and making sure that there's no hiccups there. That would be a recommendation.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate what Supervisor Garath had said, and that is that prior to 2019 and COVID, the Samaritan was running at pretty much a break-even balance as a total enterprise. So a lot of these losses, now we're approaching $8 million with the cost of the loan. A lot of these losses are self-imposed by our decision to sell. The census is so low that there isn't enough revenue to support the Samaritan. And that is self-imposed because we can't make up our mind about the sale. I'm not saying that, we were 10 months negotiating with one buyer. It's nobody's fault here that the buyer backed out. But I do want everybody to understand that had we decided to keep the Samaritan operating as a county-run nursing home, we wouldn't have these losses. The only losses we would have incurred would have been from COVID, and then after COVID, we would bring the census back up. So I think, and now we're up to 8 million, and millions more coming. And I think that we should all be cognizant of the fact that the decision this board made is the reason we have these losses. We did have a task force and an ad hoc committee with accountants that said we could operate at the same way that we did prior to 2019 without losses. We could have built a new facility. We would have had an asset that would have been something we'd all be really proud of. We have a buyer now that's willing to renovate the old building, even though many people had said that wasn't even a logical choice. But yet here we are with a buyer that wants to do that. So this is really just my statement to the public and to the board that this was self-imposed losses. We didn't have to go this route, but we chose to. The original task force said it was a moral obligation, and everybody who was on that board at the time, except I think one or two, maybe one person was absent, but we all accepted that and we all agreed to it. As part of that moral obligation, we agreed that a $500,000 loss or a levy per year was certainly something we should be willing to accept, and we all voted yes to that. So I just want to point out that we don't need to be, or we didn't need to be in this situation. These monies could have been used as a down payment on a new building or toward the renovation, and we'd have a nursing home that everybody would know would care for the Title 19 and those who are in most need. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would take issue with the previous statements. This is not self-imposed. to understand that there's been a nursing shortage across this country. It's been especially severe in Wisconsin, and not just in nursing, but in certified nursing assistants. The reason for our shortage is not due to the sale pending or possible sale pending, because we've generously enhanced the people that we've been able to keep. But when you have like Lasada and Cedarburg paying out $10,000 and $20,000 bonuses in order to attract our people away from us, and this is going on all over the hospital and nursing home spectrum. This is not unique to us. This is happening all over the state, all over the country. This is where a majority of these losses have been coming from. And even this number is somewhat inflated by the debt that the nursing home had. So you still had the 2008 remodel debt in their, previous debt. So it's making it look bigger than it even was. The staffing shortage is what's contributing to the census, not the other way around. We can't, by law of the state, you have to have so many nurses and nursing assistants per patient. So, they can't, if you fall below that threshold, the state will come in and shut you down. And then you got a real problem on your hands. So the census has been kept low because we've been unable to attract enough people to raise it. Now, if you look out on Highway 33, you will notice there's always signs out there for us hiring. And we've been offering generous pay and bonuses, just like everybody else. But the nursing pool is very small. This is one of the reasons why we chose to divest. So, to the people out there in the public, I think this is the responsible thing to do. And it's based on a very difficult future that the county, as a single entity nursing home, is unable to handle. Whereas a private sector, multi-firm owner has the quantity of scale to be able to purchase, they can move employees, they can do so much more, they have so much more flexibility than we could possibly have. That if you want Samaritan to stay open, I believe this is the best way to have that happen, because they will be likely the ones to do it. When we talk about, well, we'll just raise taxes and cover the losses, I can't see the people willing to raise the taxes like that we would need to cover these losses. I would think that is exactly wrong. We saw this with the public safety resolution that went down pretty heartily, and that was a very small amount of increase. So I would disagree. I think that when you look at all the facts of the nursing shortages, inflation, and what's been going on in this country, realistically, you realize that now is the time. This is not self-imposed. It's not something even we wanted to do. If we could have hung on to it, we probably would have. But in the present political climate, in the way things are done, it's just not possible. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Krager-Gundrum. I'll remind everybody, we've already voted to sell, so statements now are
Understood.
taken as statements.
Understood. I did just want to speak to the staffing issue. We have two buyers who are not having a concern about staffing. The problem that we're having, I just want to reiterate this part. The problem that we're having is because we can't decide, are we going to stay open or are we going to close? Who would take a job, a full-time job, knowing that you may be closing 6 months down the road or a year down the road? Why would you give up your job that you're currently at? So that's why we're having to use contract services and a lot of part-timers. I know that the staffing issue came up in our discussions, but I do want to point out that two buyers don't consider that to be their major problem. And it's not because they're going to move people from out of state into here. Ozaki County is continuing to operate their nursing home. There are other counties that are doing the same thing by adding CBRF. They use their ARPA funds to build. But it is what it is today. We aren't going to be able to go back and vote on this. But I do want the public to know it's my opinion. And when I look at the math, it is a self-imposed loss because we cannot get the census back up after COVID to a point where we can get the revenues to support the Samaritan building, as we had done in the past. Had we made that decision right after the original task force, we'd have either a new building or a renovated building, and we'd be running smoothly. Thank you for letting me speak a second time. I appreciate it.
Supervisor Bossert.
I think I'm going to caution people not to relitigate this issue at this point. I think there's merits to the points that Supervisor Gundrum Krieger and Supervisor Kelling are making. I tend to side more with Supervisor Gundrum Krieger, but at this point, we don't have the votes to keep Samaritan. The votes on this board are not there. We have a buyer that appears to have the best interest of our seniors at heart. They value our seniors. And I think I want to focus moving forward on them and helping set them up to succeed. Thank you.
Supervisor Watson-Conrath.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate Supervisor Krieger-Gundren's point that we do need to face the facts and learn from this. But too, I wanted to point out that the evidence on retention, nursing retention, really speaks to not pay, not bonuses, and sustaining a workforce. It's healthy work environment. Do they feel empowered? Do they have a voice? And is there authentic leadership? You know, there's over 20 years of research on retention. So I want to point that fact out to you all. And then us as a board, what can we do to help with this process? And, you know, what can we do to help the staff, you know, and our county leaders who are over the Samaritan at this point until the sale, to help the staff, you know, feel empowered, feel like they have a voice in this transition.
Good comments, but we've strayed pretty far off whether we pay off the debt or not. So I think, boys, this is a 2/3 majority. We'll vote electronically. It passes unanimously. Good comments all. Our next item is the Resolution 10 grant application, Wisconsin Department of Military Affairs Public Safety Answering Point for a new grant. Motion by Supervisor Mary, second by Supervisor Gallitz. Any discussion? There being none, we'll vote electronically. This is also a 2/3 majority required. Passes unanimously. Resolution 11 is Human Services Department staffing change. This is also a 2/3 majority. A motion and a second, please. Supervisor Vespalik, Supervisor Troutner. I talked to Julie Driscoll about this. It shows that we're adding 3 positions, but we're kind of going to be able to pay for it through billing, so I'll let her expand once I turn her microphone on.
Yes, thank you. And so, as Chairman Schleif indicated, he wanted me to highlight for you all that while we are increasing our staffing, these positions are all offset by the billing that we do to the Medicaid waiver. And we are able each year to adjust our rate based on our actual costs. So this is quite different than probably what you've ever experienced with Medicaid, any kind of Medicaid rate. But each year we do the rate based on our costs. So as our staff costs increase because of raises and cost of living adjustments and our benefits, then we're able to adjust that rate as well. We have been having a productivity level for the last several years that the staff have met, and it has covered the costs of their positions. But I have asked them to work over the next year to increase that by 5 and then 10%. So that we can ensure that all the costs are covered. We also do receive a 7% administrative fee at the end of the year based on the cases that we have. So we just wanted to make sure that you are aware of that. I also wanted to make sure that you understand that this is a mandated requirement that we provide these services for the children's long-term support. And we have a 60-kid wait list, and the state has been mandating for us to eliminate our wait lists. As you will see in the report, we've done a great job at meeting the needs of eliminating the wait list, but there are just that many more children becoming eligible for the waiver. And so we're just seeing the needs increase significantly in our county.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? There being none, we'll vote electron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you give a brief explanation of what the Children's Long-Term Support Program is to start with?
Sure. And so I did not bring the team to do their dog and pony show that they did at the committee. They did a fantastic job doing a presentation for Health and Human Services Committee. But essentially children in our county age 0 to 18 who have a disability are eligible for the waiver. And it is not an income eligibility. It is simply primarily around their disability or their diagnosis. And once they're eligible for the waiver, then that allows them to receive services to support that child and that family in meeting the needs of that child's disability. It can be as minimal as just providing respite for parents who have the burden of caretaking a child who has special needs, to adaptive equipment, to physical therapy. All of those types of services are covered by the waiver so that families, regardless of their income, don't have to pay out of pocket. But because of the workload of administering this program, we have case managers who have to determine eligibility, create a care plan, authorize services, and then meet with families regularly to make sure that their needs are being met. And they carry about a caseload of around 30 kids.
Okay, thank you. That helps me understand it. Second question I have is obviously there's been a increase in the number of children in the program. Is that do we have any idea if that's expected to continue to grow in the future at that same rate? And then you touched on the ratio aspect by wondering, like, it seems like is 2 positions enough compared to the total number of increase in the last 6 years? I would think our ratio in 2018 would have been a lot higher than it is now. So I'm wondering where is this coming in the future, I guess, a little bit? Yeah,
so, we are trying to determine when that level off will occur. And what's unique about where we're at right now and why we needed to pull the trigger on the supervisor is because if we add 2 positions and we eliminate that wait list and then additional children come on and we have to come back to this board for more staff, we need to have that supervisory support. So that is why this ask was strategically created in this way. There's some data out there that the team shared with the committee around the percentage of children in our county that are estimated to be eligible, but it's not a finite number because some families, even though they might be on the wait list, when we go to enroll them, they choose to defer. So it's a voluntary program. Some families decide that they don't want the services. And what has happened in the last several years with the elimination of the waiver has been there were kids who sat on the waiver for years and years and years. And so the sentiment in the community, and especially children and families who have kids with disabilities, it's a pretty tight-knit community. And so there's sort of this known thing in the community that don't even bother because you're never going to get off that wait list. And so now that the word is out there that you get off the wait list, there are services, your kids will get the services that they need, we think that more people are identifying that they want to receive those services. We also think that our referral sources, our schools and our hospital systems are becoming, have a higher level of understanding of this service and what's available and how supportive it can be. So they're also making those referrals as well. So I can't 100% answer your question. I think that you're asking, but I do anticipate it's very likely in a year or two we could come back for a couple of more positions. But it is something that we're always trying to manage because also as kids turn 18, then they go off of the children's program and they can go into family care, which is the adult program. And so we're trying to sort of figure out where that leveling off is because we also don't want to have staff there that we don't have the work for. And this has been, every county has been experiencing the same sort of pain, I guess, with the Children's Long-Term Support Program and trying to manage how to meet the needs of their county. So the state's been really great in working with counties and understanding that it's not just something you can flip the switch and, all of a sudden have, 30 case managers to meet the needs. And so it's a little bit of a balancing act as we try to decide what's the right number.
Thank you.
I applaud you for doing this. It strikes me as a little different that schools are recognizing that the demographics are going down, the number of kids are going down, but this demographic is growing. So hope you can carry on. Supervisor McCulloch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Julie, I'm intrigued by something. When I read the report, in 2022, there were 231 children enrolled, with an additional 50 in the wait list, which is over 100% increase and was projected in 2018. So who made the projection? And how do you account for, how did that number become, how are we so far off? Or how is someone who made that who made the projection? And what do you account for that being that far off, that the needs, just 6 years later being that great in this category? And you sort of answered it with Brian, but I'm also intrigued, are we broadening the category that these children fall into? So anyhow, can you expand on that a little bit?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
And it's also kind of wild that you said that was 6 years ago. So my life is flashing before my eyes.
Am I right about that? 6 years?
That is accurate, yes.
Okay,
So the original data that we received was based on the number of children that were on the wait list at that time. The state of Wisconsin is the one who determines eligibility for children. So we don't do the screening and eligibility. The state does the screening and eligibility and then notifies us that this child is determined to be eligible for the waiver and they are in your county of residence. And so that original projection was based on the kids that we had on the wait list at that time.
Who made the projection?
The state of Wisconsin. So we created our plan based on the number that we were given at that point in time. And then as I indicated earlier, what the reasoning that, we seem to believe is that there are more families that realize, okay, now if I get on the wait list, I'm actually going to get services. We're looking right now at a 6-month wait. The goal is 60 days. But before, people were waiting 5 and 8, sometimes 10 years before they would get off the waiver. And so more families have been willing to get on the wait list because they know they're going to get services. And then as I think just the better screening and the better assessing of children's needs has created more children that become eligible.
But they haven't changed the metrics for that. That remains the same. I just have a hard time getting my head around because we have in that demographic, there are fewer kids today in all across the board under the age of 18, but this number is growing. That just seems very odd.
So you are seeing certain diagnoses like autism grow exponentially. So the number of children who have a diagnosis or on a
diagnosis of autism,
right, that are on the spectrum, that has grown significantly as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else wish to speak? Okay, now we'll vote electronically. And like I said, this requires a 2/3 vote. It passes unanimously. Next is Resolution 12, authorizing Washington County Information Technology Department to provide information technology services to the town of West Bend as part of shared revenue of the county sales tax. Supervisor Pridemore, Supervisor Shadron. We have our Director of Technology here if anybody has any questions. Supervisor Bossert.
Okay. At this point, which communities have we already joined in with IT on, and which communities are in the queue after them?
So we have.
Oh, sorry.
So we have signed agreements with the Village of Kewaskum, the Village of Newburgh, the Town of Addison. Those are current. This would be the fourth that we're adding. And in the pipeline, the Village of Germantown is a huge one that has reached out and expressed extreme interest. And I believe there was a couple, the Town of Erin, there's a couple other small ones that reached out with interest.
Perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is more of a general question, actually more for Aaron. In the overall budget, I mean, obviously these requests are coming in. You see they're going to start picking up, right? Are we all covered? We're all good with this? The overall budget with all these?
Yes, we are covered in the budget. We budgeted for an additional staff member, if you recall, in this biennium. So that was done deliberately, partially to help address this workload.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Supervisor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a kind of a general question, not asking for specific amounts, but overall, what type of value is there to these entities, these municipalities, monetarily speaking? I mean, are we talking savings of $40,000, $50,000, $100,000? I know it might vary depending on the size, but ballpark, about how much money are they saving on this program?
Sure. What I'm seeing in the industry right now is when a business has to go out and reach out to a managed service provider, we're seeing rates from anywhere $180 per hour up to $325 per hour. So these are what municipalities have been paying to other managed service providers, and it's all going to depend on how much of the need is. If there's low need, then the costs are low for municipalities. There's also other services such as network monitoring, where you pay a couple $100 per month per server, per firewall, stuff like that. So it's really different at every location, depending on what they have. But I would say roughly $180 per hour is what we're saving these municipalities.
And any idea annually what kind of hours they'd be billing?
Everyone's unique depending on need. I can tell you that we have put in over 180 hours of our time to the 3 municipalities that we have so far onboarded this year.
Okay, thank you.
Question for you. So I'm assuming that some of the townships, I see that it has to do with licensing and that there's savings and, a group rate. Is mostly what you're doing securing their information systems? You're not actually going in and doing work on their equipment, or are you? I guess I'd like to know exactly what you do, like for a town, let's use the town of West Bend.
Yeah, for the town of West Bend, we are going to become their IT department. So we will help out with, hey, my email's not working today. We will help out with, hey, the firewall needs to be updated. We will work on transitioning them to cloud services. We will help with every aspect of IT.
That's considerable, isn't it?
It is.
Okay.
I think our team enjoys doing it, and I'm blessed to have a great team that has the knowledge, and I think it's great for these municipalities to get that expert support.
Yeah, I can see the savings in the scale. Putting it all together as one group. I can see that there's got to be a tremendous savings all the way around, rather than everybody going out and having to hire their own IT staff and then get their licensing and computers. So do you help them get their computers and their equipment?
We do.
Okay.
So we work with a third-party organization. They negotiate a contract with the state of Wisconsin, so we get the state of Wisconsin pricing, and those discounts and savings are passed on to the municipalities as well. And we'll help them procure. We'll get them all the way to the process of what they need to order. Then the municipality will order it. They'll usually drop ship it to us or get it to us. We'll set it up, and then we'll deploy it to them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If I can help answer Supervisor Kelding's question, too. My understanding with the town of Addison, when I was at their meetings, they said the upfront cost for the new equipment was kind of hefty, but after that, they were saving thousands of dollars a year from all the services that they had before, that they can now rely on us. So
that is correct.
Yep. I hope that helps you a little bit. That's what Addison. I know West Bend will be different. Thank you.
Supervisor Gallitz.
Thank you, Chair. I think you may have answered this indirectly, but you mentioned cloud services. So are we moving away from distributed and mainframe? Or
what are those?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
mainframes aren't going away.
So the mainframes are not going away.
Oh, but
at the county they are.
Yeah, but cloud services are, so all of these shared service arrangements, we're just buying additional space for their data storage and processing.
So the county is not buying it. When we talk about cloud services, we're talking about moving file stores to Microsoft Office 365. We're talking about moving email from maybe a Spectrum email account over to Office 365. So those are the cloud services that we're talking about. We are also entertaining things like moving QuickBooks, for example, off of storing data on a local computer to the cloud. Those will all be purchased by the municipality. We would just help them transition to them. So the county's not purchasing anything.
Right.
Yep.
So they are. Okay. So each individual entity will pay for their own user fees, license fees, storage capacity, you name it. Like work for them.
Or the
Because
support
of-
aspect,
We have the
correct.
skills and abilities, and they don't.
Correct.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Supervisor Mary.
Thank you, Chair. The more we get into this with the other entities in the county, do we take a risk at some point in time where more time is being spent on their efforts that the county's activities would take a hit?
So at this point, we have not. And I have, the one person we did bring on, the one person that's kind of dedicated to the IT shared services. And at this point, he can maintain that, as well as he's also working on the county. The most of his time is spent at the county. If we start to bring more municipalities on, then yes, I may come and say, hey, we're spending too much of this guy's time. We need to bring on another resource. But at this point, the only concern I can see in the future is Germantown. We would spend a hefty time there. They are a large enough entity where I think we would have to really look at the resources needed for that. But with these smaller municipalities, the issues and stuff that we are seeing, they're honestly pretty quick for us to fix and take care of.
Thank you.
But that is something I will continue to monitor and report on.
Any other discussion? There being none, we'll vote electronically. This is a simple majority vote. Passes unanimously. Our next resolution is number 13, confirming the Washington County Community Development Department providing municipal planning to the Village of Jackson as part of shared revenue sales tax. Motion by Supervisor Schwab, second by Supervisor Kelling. Any discussion? There being none, we'll vote electronically. This is also a simple majority. And it passes unanimously. And our last resolution is 14, confirming the Washington County Community Development Department providing municipal planning for the Village of Kewaskum as part of shared revenue sales tax. Supervisor Kelling, Supervisor Hartwig. Any discussion? There being none, we'll vote we have one. Supervisor Gallitz.
Thank you, Chair. Just occurred to me with these number of shared services a few years ago or months ago. Hard to say which it is. The clamor about giving money back to the communities from the county sales tax. So
we are.
Yes, we are as part of this. So what I'm getting at is a narrative should be very clear to those municipalities that they indeed are getting sales tax dollars back, even though they wanted it mid-moraine, whatever, specifically for roads, but they are getting it back. So it would probably behoove us to ensure that message is conveyed somehow to those entities.
Part of our standard package, and Aaron, you can confirm this, but anytime somebody gets shared services, they have to pass a resolution on their board saying we recognize this is sales tax.
The elected officials, obviously, but it's the constituents. And if we can control that narrative, then maybe we can or could. I mean, all of us can in our respective districts, but if there's something that we can do on a broader basis, maybe an upcoming executive newsletter, for example.
Good thought. Any further discussion? We'll vote electronically. Also a simple majority. And it passes unanimously. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, July 10th at 6 p.m. This meeting